Congratulations, Bitcoiners, $100,000. You're welcome. Not my words, but those of the future President Donald J. Trump on Truth Social. Amazingly, we have a president congratulating us on 100,000, but also partially taking credit for Bitcoin hitting $100,000 after all of these years. This was just one of many insane stories from this week. We are going to unpack them all. Of course, MLW and I are here on the Friday 5. Let's go.
Let's go.
What is up, everybody? I'm Scott Melker, also known as the Wolf of All Streets. Before we get started, please subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. So yesterday, man, I had a plan. My son's best friend's 6th birthday. We took our kids to Hollywood Studios at Disney World. Of course, the one day I had randomly planned to take off, we hit $100,000. And I don't stream, but maybe I was just saving it for you.
You're saving it for this morning. And look, I think, one of the greatest testaments to where Bitcoin is that, that in 6 months, this is going to feel like just another day in Bitcoin's inevitable, sort of inexorable march forward to what it's going to become.
Listen, it's just another price. It's just another number. It's just another level. It doesn't have more meaning than any other line on a chart, but there's something about 100,000 that feels different.
We've had two numbers in recent Bitcoin history, the last 6 years, let's call it, last 7 years, that we've anchored to in a serious way. The first was, of course, 20,000, right? Once that number was hit in 2017, it became the bellwether mark for like whether we were so back, baby, right? For the entire next cycle, it didn't matter when we got to 16 or 17. It was like, when are we going to hit 20? And then after 20 was breached, no other level around it really had psychological power. I mean, almost as soon as that was breached, it was like laser eyes to 100K. It was the obvious next thing. And so because of that, it's really been a bigger marker, narrative line in the sand than 60 or 70 or 80. And so, from just a sheer kind of emotional standpoint, I do think it's a big deal for folks.
I've tweeted quite a few times what happens when we hit 100,000 to the laser eyes, because obviously they had to keep them through an entire cycle, but people seem to forget exactly what you said. It was laser eyes to 100,000. My proposal, which I jokingly tweeted, was laser thighs to 1 million. And ChatGPT came up with this guy with laser thighs just because it rhymed. But will the laser eyes keep or remove their laser eyes? I wonder.
Well, Jesse Powell, contrarian that he is, decided that his approach would be laser eyes after 100K.
Nice.
So he came prepared. He came prepared with a very dramatic profile picture upgrade. That go check out if you haven't. It's Jess Powell on Twitter.
Awesome. So here we go. We've got quite a few takes, obviously, on this 100,000, which is clearly our first story. So you have, obviously, Donald Trump. Congratulations, Bitcoin's $100,000. You're welcome. If you didn't see that, I'm not subscribed to Truth Social, so I'm sorry about what that looks like, but he posted that on Truth Social. I love that he kind of took credit for it. We have El Salvador President Nayib Bukele tweeting, "It ain't much, but it's honest work," meme. Hilarious. So we have multiple presidents, one posting a meme. And, of course, Peter Schiff. Without expected government intervention, this milestone never would have been hit. Seems to not realize that the same rules apply to gold. But hey, here you go. Of course, Novogratz celebrating 100,000. Brian Armstrong pointing out that if you had bought $100 of Bitcoin when Coinbase was founded in June 2012, it would now be worth $1.5 million. And if you had just kept that $100, you'd have $73 worth of buying power. And of course, Scaramucci finally kind of coming around saying, "I owe President-elect Trump a McDonald's gift card for Christmas," admitting at least to some degree that, of course, Donald Trump's support of Bitcoin has led us to this point.
Yeah, I mean, there's no denying that the changing political nature and destiny of this thing has been a huge part of the story throughout this year. I think you can even argue that, while it wasn't political in the sense that a politician getting on board was, I've said before, I really think that it was BlackRock filing the Bitcoin spot ETF that drew the line in the sand post FTX collapse that said, "Sorry, anti-crypto army, it's not going to die this time." Up until that moment, it could have gone lower. It could have been more and more insecure. When the world's biggest asset manager said, "No, we want it," then, that stopped for all intents and purposes. It threw a big brick wall. And it's been a political story throughout this entire time. Now, would it have hit these numbers even without that? I believe absolutely, but it wouldn't have happened in the same way or on the same timeline.
Yeah, I think it would have taken us a little longer, certainly, to get to $100,000. But I don't think that there's anyone who's been around for a few cycles that thought this wouldn't happen eventually. Yep. So here we are, and you can't talk about 100,000 in the political environment without talking about these incredible appointments that Trump is making. I kind of bundled a few of them together. We have Scaramucci once again. Listen, you got to give the guy credit where credit's due. He was the biggest critic, but he's giving support where he feels he should. Scott Bessent, Kevin Hassett, Paul Atkins, Michael Falkender. Have to admit, Trump is cooking with his economic team so far. So we officially have SEC chair Paul Atkins. Guy was on the Securities and Exchange Commission before, wildly outspoken in favor of crypto, even owns an agency that effectively does a company that does consulting in that. And then this just broke. Trump names David Sachs as White House AI and crypto czar. We saw names like Chris Giancarlo being floated for this job. Of course, this is David Sachs of VC and All-In Pod fame. I mean, this guy is wildly pro crypto, pro AI, pro tech, pro mergers and acquisitions, pro innovation, anti-regulation. The hits just keep on coming. I don't think you can be upset as a crypto native about any of these picks. I can see other political reasons maybe you would, but from our perspective, I mean, we are humming along here.
Yeah, I mean, I think with this AI and crypto czar, with that position, no one knows exactly what it's going to do, what authority it's going to have. I think that putting someone who is, heart of Silicon Valley as that clearly indicates where the trajectory is in terms of what the priorities are likely to be. And Sachs is a pretty open book when it comes to his particular politics and how he thinks about these things. Yeah, I agree. I mean, listen, I think Scaramucci's post is reflective of something that you see a lot right now, which is there are a lot of folks who still have whatever issues they have with Trump himself and really can't get on board the Trump train, but who recognize or who do appreciate that the coalition that has been built around this administration this time, it looks a little bit different than 2016. It looks a lot different than 2016. It's a much sort of wider set of folks, and a lot of it tends to be pretty heart and center, when it comes to what's good for this particular industry. So I think there's a lot of enthusiasm out there for very clear reasons.
Yeah, I mean, you've talked about this quite a few times, but I think the first Trump election was a bit of a surprise. It took them months and months and months to even get key people in place. They were ready for victory this time. And regardless of your thoughts on Trump as a person, as you said, you have to give credit for putting in extremely competent people, whether you politically agree with them or not, but competent people into every meaningful post, and seemingly a willingness that was not there in the first term to listen to younger, smarter people and just kind of wipe your hands of these things that are not your core competency. That's what you would want a leader or a CEO to do. In the first Trump presidency, a lot of people maybe didn't think that he treated it like the business that they thought he would. He clearly is now. He's saying, you're in charge of this. You're my CFO. You're my CMO. And
especially on the business side of things. I think, there's a lot to discuss for various people around.
That's what I'm talking
Defense,
about.
education, whatever. But when it comes to the business
of our agent,
when it comes to business and economics, there is a very clear through line. It is the next generation of pro tech, pro innovation, pro America, like excited builders. Like this is every single one of these positions has that feel and that flavor. Atkins is interesting. Atkins is not a ideologue deregulator for the sake of deregulation. He's a person who feels on a very fundamental level that on average, government rules introduce that there's always a balance of complexity versus what sort of benefit they have. And he just tends to think that most times they introduce, undue complexity that doesn't actually add value. He's not opposed to consumer protection. He wants fair and free markets. He wants markets to function well. It's not going to be, when we think about what it's likely to be for crypto, he's not going to turn and look the other direction. He's going to be a champion of common sense, get out of the way, but make sure it works well, kind of rules and regulations. So, and I think that you're seeing that sort of, there's an energy more than anything else that is aggressively forward facing that I think has people excited right now.
Yeah, this is the part of Make America Great Again that I think the Wall Street educated, Ivy League educated Wall Street people could actually get behind. And you see a lot of them that hated Trump kind of getting behind it. People do view America in the past as being great as innovators and entrepreneurs and leading the world in these things and not stifling innovation. And it seems like, at least in this regard, we are moving in that direction. So I think there's a lot to be excited about. I mean, we don't need to beat it to death here, but it's pretty exciting.
Yep. And it's expressed in the price of Bitcoin, 100K.
And now we have the next story when coming to the U.S. government that maybe people won't like quite as much. U.S. government moves nearly $2 billion in Silk Road Bitcoin to Coinbase. It made a stop in another wallet on the way. A lot to unpack here, because I've heard some say that this is scheduled selling that they had sort of planned before, and that these tranches being sent to Coinbase was preordained. But this is also our strategic reserve that Trump has planned to hold on to, and it could maybe to somebody possibly feel like the Biden administration or someone in the Biden administration who actually knows what's going on in the world on a day-to-day basis might be selling this off in spite.
Yeah. It's kind of hard not to feel like, I mean, so look, the analysis that says this was planned, it's been a long thing in the works, all of that is absolutely true, 100%. However, when you're in a lame duck period in an administration, it doesn't matter what has been planned. You still have authority to decide what you are and aren't going to care about. And the fact that someone decided to care about this, it's hard to read. No one's doing this because it's on their checklist and they're going to be docked on their allowance if they don't get it done before they go. Whoever is architecting this knows exactly what they're doing, in my opinion. And it's look, there's a lot of doors that hit you on the way out, and this feels like one of them to me.
Is there any way that this isn't being sold? I feel like it could be going to Coinbase custody, right? We don't know exactly why it's being moved, and we do know that the government has effectively, chosen Coinbase as its trusted custodian and the place that it will buy and sell. The irony of that, when this SEC has been going after them, should not be lost on anyone. But is there a chance it's just moving into different custody?
The issue that I've seen, I think it was Scott Johnson who was tweeting about this, is that there are very specific rules around how the U.S. government Bitcoin has to be custodied. And I think that some meaningful portion of this is in basically Gen Pop with all the other kind of, melange of, it's not the general Coinbase wallets, not segregated wallets, which would suggest that it's either going to be sold or someone's doing something wrong. So it looks like its intention is to be sold, but who knows?
I mean, it really does take the wind out of the sails of a strategic Bitcoin reserve if all of a sudden we can't just transfer it and put it on the balance sheet and would actually have to buy. That's a very different conversation. So
yes, no, it's a meaningful spite action is kind of the, that's why it's probably appealing to someone who wants to be spiteful.
Yeah. So the next conversation that we have to have, which is always one of my favorites because we've been waiting so long, is it alt season? Altcoins have obviously been blasting off across the board. We saw the dinosaurs like XRP and Cardano absolutely going nuts. XRP in particular, there was a lot of disillusionment. Altcoins are dead. They're never going to move again. It's over. It's only going to be Bitcoin. I just want to bring up a quick chart of my own. This is a Bitcoin dominance chart, which many people look at. If you look at when alt seasons have started in the past, for those who believe in Fourier cycles, December 16, December 2020, here we are, December 2024, and Bitcoin dominance dropping from 62% to already sub 56%. And in context of this, of course, we have XRP going absolutely nuts. People saying that alt season has unofficially begun. Ether seeing some major inflows, even on some days outpacing Bitcoin. Parabolic rallies. Of course, this is a Bloomberg take where they think that it's a pandemic boom that's going to burst. And finally, my favorite story maybe ever, U.S. lawmaker Michael Collins revealed to be trading meme coin Ski Mask Dog.
Yeah. I mean, that's
alt season. Does this mean it's alt season?
That's my favorite indicator. I mean, the thing about that one that's crazy is that, like, congressional disclosures are now the context for something doing, a 10x, right? Which is, look, we live in a world of financial nihilism, and I think that there are cynical takes on that, and then there are cynical but it's still fun takes on that, where a lot of this is just like, I have this money to lose and I may as well do something fun with it. And that's certainly what I think, Ski Dog Mask and these things are. Look, it feels pretty clear that we're in another phase of the cycle, right? I mean, I think to me, the sloughing off of the, you know, the sleepy eyes from like the XRPs of the world is one thing. I think the fact that the ETF, the ETH ETF inflows have on a number of days now beat out Bitcoin inflows is to me the biggest indicator that something meaningful is shifting in terms of allocations. One of the things that has always kind of felt clear to me when it comes to just a very kind of baseline Wall Street understanding of crypto is it's not unreasonable for someone who just wants exposure, but who doesn't really want to think too hard to say Bitcoin's the digital gold thing. ETH is the tokens and all the other crap stuff. So if I have exposure to both of those, I basically get exposure to everything, right? Obviously, that's not how people inside the industry feel. And as you get a more sophisticated analysis, I think there's going to be lots and lots of flavors of, you know, traditional financial products that people buy. But it's a not unreasonable take as sort of a, you know, 80-20 ceteris paribus. Let's go, you know, get my exposure and be moving on. And so it's been interesting that that hasn't been how it's played out at all. People have just been interested in Bitcoin. The ETH ETFs have basically done nothing. The fact that they are now seeing some action, I think, indicates that we are seeing some shift in how people are thinking about it and interest again in the rest of the non-Bitcoin part of the industry.
Yeah, and total crypto market cap is now 3.5 trillion. It was topped at 3 trillion in 2021. So clearly a lot of that is the movement of Bitcoin adding that value, but there's new money coming in, and it's very clear that that new money, whether it's money that was here before and is regaining interest or is completely brand new retail, there is new money in this space, and that should increase as we see bigger headlines about $100,000 Bitcoin and Ethereum ETF inflows. That money is going to find a new home every time the market gets even slightly boring, just as it did in past cycles.
I would expect to see, and this is, I think, the thing that we should look for over the next couple months, some pretty serious narrative competition, right? We've talked a bunch of times about how there hasn't really been that altcoin, non-Bitcoin side of the market narrative to really drive new behavior in. The closest thing that we've had to it is meme coins, and God bless, a lot of people have tried to become meme coin philosophers, but it certainly hasn't had, at least yet, the broad resonance that NFTs or ICOs did. Although I think some of the flavors are the same, particularly with the ICOs. You see now people kind of trying to take the same narrative juice that ICOs had of decentralize everything with meme coins. That's sort of where I've seen some people try to take that space. But as more money becomes available for non-Bitcoin things, inevitably there's a vacuum, there's a narrative vacuum that needs to be filled with something to be, you know, AIX crypto coins. Is it going to be, you know, something is going to rise up as a trend in the through line that people get excited about. And I think that'll take a lot of shape of the rest of whatever the cycle we have.
We will have our big bubble and we will have our little bubbles that go up and pop and narratives. I really reiterate, I think it will be very similar, at least rhyme to previous cycles. And I think we're just getting started right now. We talked about, obviously, President Trump speaking favorably about Bitcoin repeatedly, Nayib Bukele, other world leaders, other huge names. Here's another maybe meaningful world leader that's been talking about Bitcoin of late this week, of course, saying that nobody has the power to ban Bitcoin and that crypto will naturally continue to develop. And he signed a law, Putin, that declares cryptocurrencies its property, a significant step in regulating the industry. I don't know if we want to unpack him before we get into Powell and Griffin, but we've got some big names speaking favorably about Bitcoin. Maybe we'll talk about Putin quickly first.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite comment around this, and I apologize, I quoted them on my show. Maybe it was Neil Jacobs, but I quoted them on the show the other day. You know, in the wake of these comments from Putin, there were a number of folks who basically said, very reasonably, whoa, hold your jets. You don't want to hold up Putin as, you know, as your example of adopter. And someone made the point that it wasn't Putin embracing Bitcoin, it was Putin capitulating to Bitcoin. And that's very, very much what all of this felt like. These were not full-throated endorsements of, these aren't Larry Fink, right? Going from I was wrong to now I'm the big bull. These are people who are throwing their arms up, shrugging, and saying, it's here and it's not going away.
This is Gensler approving the Bitcoin spot ETF and saying I kind of had to. It's
totally.
more that. It's
exactly.
more that. Yeah. I totally agree. And listen, we haven't heard Jamie Dimon yet. Maybe he'll eventually come around. I don't know. Maybe we'll get Peter Schiff. But Ken Griffin, I mean, talking about the CEO of Citadel, this is a guy on par with Larry Fink as far as financial power and respect. And Jerome Powell, I have clips from both of them. Let's see what Jerome Powell just had to say about Bitcoin. This is the chairman of the Fed.
In the Federal Reserve itself, in terms of the system, what do you think of that idea?
I don't think that's how people think about it. I mean, it's so, people use Bitcoin as a speculative asset, right? It's like gold. It's just like gold, only it's virtual. It's digital. People are not using it as a form of payment or as a store of value. It's highly volatile. It's not a competitor for the dollar. It's really a competitor for gold. That's really how I think of it.
Kind of a lot there, to be honest, because those things don't necessarily square with one another.
Yeah, I mean,
the way he sort of talked about it, he's saying gold's not a store of value, which I think a lot of people would take issue with, basically. But that he's speculative assets.
I think he's wrong, but he's it's the way that he's wrong in a way where he's trying to. This to me is an example of when you've lost your first narrative battle, so you try to claim, a secondary victory, by trying to like nudge people towards it is more than maybe what I said it was before, but it's not fully the thing that you think it is. I mean, that's the feel and the flavor to me.
He seemed more confused about gold than Bitcoin in that clip, to be quite honest. But I think the story there is that Jerome Powell is sitting on stage answering questions about Bitcoin. Right. Yeah. When you zoom out, regardless of what he says. And here's Ken Griffin, the CEO of Citadel.
You say this whole thing is some crazy speculative bubble that ends badly the way Warren Buffett says? Or do you say it could just live up in these numbers and it makes a lot of sense? So the question is how much has this structurally captured the zeitgeist of the world?
A little quiet.
Just, what do you think? I don't know. I think part of this is, going back to why did people vote for Trump? They want to get away from the yoke of government. So therefore, maybe it has a future. It may have a future. You have to remember that an asset like this, an intangible asset like this, its value derives from intangible aspects. Right. Part of being a community, part of having this sense of I'm standing opposed to the power of the state. Right? People take joy in that. And I think that one of the things that we did see over the course of this election cycle is the American people saying, I want to have agency in my life.
That's the kicker. That wasn't the best high quality video, but people want agency in their lives, and they view this as kind of a hedge against the government. Interesting.
Yeah, I think this is a much more interesting of all the three. This is the analysis that I think is the most interesting, because I think it most comes to the conclusion that has been obvious to a lot of folks for some time, that there is this deep wellspring of dissatisfaction about where things are. I mean, look, if the Democrats understood that discontent better, they would have done better in the elections, right? The fact that we're unable to understand or appreciate how people feel, so much of politics in the last 10 years has been trying to convince people that they're wrong about how good things are or how bad things feel. And, it just hasn't worked. There's been this deep underlying discontent. We're looking for exits. Bitcoin, it represents a very empowering exit path. And, I think it's smart that Ken Griffin is finally appreciating what it is. This is this idea of it being an intangible asset that's valued based on intangibles is something that in general, when it's been presented in the past, has been presented as a pejorative. And I think what's interesting about this particular set of comments is that finally it's being presented as fact, not as pejorative, right? The fact that a community believes in it and has value. I mean, look, the dollar has the full faith and confidence of the U.S. government. You know what I mean? Like, these things have community behind them. They have narrative. They have belief. They're not just tangible. And I think that the fact that the mainstream financial world is finally coming to appreciate, the particulars of this, I think is a very, very telling change.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that sentiment. And it's going to be very hard to find people who don't have at least a favorable or measured opinion on Bitcoin in the coming years, regardless of their stature, because they're just going to have to.
Dude, FT Alphaville is gonna be the lone holdout. Did you see the seething, frothing at the side of the mouth apology that they wrote?
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, they are. I mean, look, it's a bold move to be the last bastion of hate, and they're clearly staking their territory. For anyone who hasn't seen FT Alphaville, the Financial Times has long been one of the biggest and loudest and most annoying critics of all things crypto, and they willfully will not recant or turn back on that.
Vanguard. Yeah. Well, I think we're in the then they fight you, then you win phase. So it's nice to be in the then you win phase after being laughed at and dismissed for so long. We have sort of an honorable mention story here at the end. That was 5, but we do have French Hill saying that he's going to plan to fully investigate Operation Choke Point 2.0. As you can see here, listen, I think everybody is now aware because of Andreessen going on Rogan and Musk tweeting about it that tech and crypto were debanked or not offered banking services in the first place. Nice to see that maybe we'll get some clarity on that and get to the bottom of it in this next administration.
Yeah, you know what we need. I don't know if anyone's made it yet, but we really need the meme of the dominoes going from tiny to giant, with the first one being Nick Carter writing a really, really long essay about Operation Choke Point 2.0, leading to, where we are now in congressional investigations. Great reminder that, we sometimes are annoying, admittedly, but screaming loud is almost always better than keeping your mouth shut when it comes to things that you see in the world that shouldn't be the way that they are.
Bitcoiners have been right about a lot of things. Well, here we are. I mean, prices 99,400 yesterday, depending on your exchange. When speaking about this insane price action, I believe there was about a $12,000 to $14,000 candle spread. I mean, as high as 104, as low as roughly 90, depending on the exchange. I think over $2.5 billion in liquidations, obviously mostly longs. This insane candle. And we're going to see more of this as leverage builds up. And that's going to be the story about these huge moves that we've seen in the past and we'll see in the future. It's going to be jackasses getting liquidated, highly leveraged on exchanges. But here we are, right back at $99,400 after going almost as low as 90 on some exchanges. The volatility will remain. It's going to get interesting. For now, I think it's fair that we celebrate that $100,000 mark, even if we're not sitting above it at this current moment, and just take a minute to be excited and glad that we're still here.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
All right, guys. Well, we will see you next Friday for the next Friday 5. Bitcoin will be at $1 million. We'll be thinking about laser pies, what we're going to do next. Who knows? It's hard to predict even what will happen a week into the future with the velocity of this news. Guys, follow NLW. Check out the breakdown, of course, where he gets into most of these exact topics in much more depth throughout the week. And until next Friday, thank you, guys. Thanks. Cheers, guys.
That's dope.